Halfway.
It's AWTITUDE representing for the Lion's Voice. Yes, massive. This is the time for I and I, the lion them to tell I and I story, our story. Yes? And we reign and rule like this. Reign and rule, yeah. Selassie, I reign and rule. You can't take the lion vibes, people. If you no fool, cause we no Selassie reign and rule. Reign and rule. Selassie, I reign and rule. Queen Omega drop them in the fire, pull from them, no Queen Omega, she reign and rule. Royal shite, ancient essence, Emperor Selassie in a majestical presence, flash of all sevens, projecting through I and I events. We sing a song for the king, we bring joy and blessing and overstanding, yeah. We hear Jah every day, reign and rule, yeah. Selassie, I reign and rule. Yes, I lion vibes, Selassie, I reign and rule. Attitude say that Boondocks, Black Organization of Noble Diplomats optimizing expressions to the world. Till the world, till the end.
Amina, the time has come for the lioness to tell our own story. No surrender, no retreat, we are Jaja soldier. Rougher than the streets, tougher than a boulder. Bigging up Lamb's voice. Now put it, I Jollifer said that.
Greetings, this is Shiloh. The time has come for the lions to tell their own story. See? This is the lion's voice. Keep it locked, right? Yes, sir. Shiloh said that. Are you satisfied? Wipe those tears from your eyes. I'm all alone, still you thought I was telling a lie. This is the lion's voice. Keep it locked, right? Yes, sir.
What are you waiting for? Come together, calling from near and far. Know who you are. What are you waiting for? Rally up, it takes the dust. What are you waiting for? Ancestors paved the way for us. Yes, I am Ketis Oyonde, asking, what are you waiting for to come together? The time has come for the lions to tell our own story. This is the lion's voice.
African pride, root of all nations, boy. I tried with the lion, the Rastafari. Lion up, it tried with lioness like I do. Empress on the front line, we need you. This is Medicine, the steady one, and you are now tuned in to the Lion's Voice Network. What the lion forward for do? Scorch them. Roast and parch them.
I will never stop, hail the Most High, and I will never stop, call Rastafari. Blessed love, this is Kushite representing for the Lion's Voice. We are here to tell our own story, Rastafari.
The time has come for lions to tell I and I own story. Yes, you're listening to Lion's Voice. I and I is Rastabat shading from the island of Sincroy. Yeah, I'm bringing to you Rastafari. Can you feel it? Rastafari. Babylon born when Rasta come together. Can you feel it? Rastafari. Because Babylon done when I and I come together. Look how we live together, look how we work together, Whoa, Babylon done when Rasta come together. Yeah, Rastafari, His Majesty and Empress men and blessed. Yeah, man, hailing from Sincroy, Rastafari, I hear you. Aye.
Empress Manel, Alliance Science. Oh, you're wrong. Universally unfold, be told. Blessed love, this is Itege Idama, and it's time for the lioness and the lion's voices to be heard. This is the lion's voice, Rastafari.
Yes, this is Tippy I, The time has come for the lions to tell our own story. You're listening to the Lion's Voice vlog. Respect and love from St. Croix VI to the world. Rastafari.
The fittest of the fittest shall survive. My people, open your eyes. Wake up. Blessed love, this is Queen Omega representing for all lions and lionesses. With the lion's voice, we come to tell our story. Rastafari, live it. Hey, the lion's voice. Rastafari.
Yeah, David Dread of Steel Pulse, and I'm saying hail to the lion voice because it's time that the lion have its voice, have its own story. Says I'm stepping out here. Hear me now. Yeah, the lion's voice. Raw.
I'm Nana Farika. The time has come for the lioness to tell her story from her viewpoint and tell the world who Queen Omega is. This is the lion's voice.
Well, lion voice, tell them that's the people first choice. Lion voice, make the lioness them feel nice. Lion voice, with the lion cubs we sacrifice. Lion voice, got to show the people them the life. Lion voice.
Well, great is the Almighty, and greatly to be praised in the city of Haile Selassie I, the mount of His holiness.
Yeah, from Cape to Cairo, from Timbuktu to the Nile, you know, the whole entire continent.
Beautiful for situation, the joy of the whole earth is Mount Zion, from Accra to Addis Ababa.
Yes, it's a beautiful continent, better control, Mama Africa.
Very beautiful.
From Cape to Cairo, from Timbuktu to the Nile, like smile. For Mama
I hear you call Mama Africa. Been so long since I see Mama. Father of Africa set the law. The lion come and dismantle Babylon flaw. We gonna use solar energy, use sanitation to build the ecology. We utilizing green technology. We hailing Haile Selassie first without apology. And then we build the youth them economy. We dismantle Babylon monopoly. We teach the youth them how to live properly. Tell them make sure them got the title fit them property.
yes, this beautiful continent, better control, Mama.
Greetings in that divine name of His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie I. Glory and honor in the name of his chosen queen, Empress Waziri Menen. My name is Kwasi Bansu, aka the Chasmach Kwasi, aka Ras Kwasi, aka the Reading Ras, aka the Pan-African Happy Man. Creative industry attorney. I'm an author, I'm an artist, I'm an actionist, and right now I am the host of Lion Talk Live. Welcome to Lion Talk Live and welcome to the Lion Voice Network, where the lions are telling our own story. Tonight we have another classic episode. It's African Liberation Month here on the Lion Voice Network, and we are highlighting voices that are born and raised on the African continent. I'm an African, but I wasn't born on the continent. Africa was born in I was born in Jamaica, so I can't speak to the experience of being born in Mama Africa and growing up in Mama Africa. So we're bringing our African-born brethren and sistren this month on the platform. We have them every month, but some months here on the channel, we have different highlights and different themes. So this month, African Liberation Month, and look out, we're going to be putting together a nice panel discussion with African voices. This Saturday, we will be hosting a group of Rasses from South Africa, big Africa Day, African Liberation Day event in South Africa. We have a panel. I'll drop the flyer by the end of this episode so that we can sip up in our African. So, repatriation is a must. We are here, World War III, and today we're going to be touching on how World War III touches the African continent, because there are several conflicts on the continent, and these are not isolated incidents. These are not local conflicts. When we follow the money, when we follow the weaponry that's coming in, we realize that there's a common thread. There are common sides. People have taken side. The chessboard has been formulated. I heard somewhere said that the most active theaters in World War III happening right now are happening on the African continent. And I had to think about it because, I always maintain it's outside of the continent. And when I really check, they probably are correct in terms of kinetic warfare happening right now. A lot of it's happening in the continent. We look at these things, you hear about tribal war, but you're not checking what are the resources that are funding the war, who's bringing in the weapons for one side, who's bringing in the weapons for the other side. And we're going to get some people to talk about those things. But tonight we're dealing with West Africa. And we're not just going to talk about the war. We want to talk about peace. We want to talk about the future. You know what I mean? Because we're talking about the building of heaven on earth on this channel. Because if we don't have a goal, we don't have a mission, we don't have a directive, how do we achieve it? What are we working for? We're working for the status quo? No, we are working to return the earth to that Edenic state. And we don't have any illusion that that is a static state, because His Majesty said peace is a becoming. No, him say peace is not a is, it's a becoming. So how does that manifest? His Majesty promulgates the first constitution of Ethiopia in 1931, taking power from himself and delegating it, to, at that time it was the House of Nobles, the Senate. And then 1955 coming with a revised constitution with a lower House of Representatives delegating power that the people now who had been prepared would be able to have a say in their government. Unprecedented, transferring Ethiopia from a feudal state empire to a constitutional monarchy. You know what I mean? This is the mission, is that manifestation, and Zion resides with the people. So I and I have to build up ourselves. So we're going to talk about what is the vision, and we have the perfect guest tonight for that mission. Learned brethren, went to university on the continent. If you haven't seen his episode, we played it, the flash forward on Sunday, so you can catch that. Just click on the video section. He's also one of our Lion Pride on Patreon, and I say, even though we're only 47 strong in the Patreon, we're trying to get to 50, so make sure you join. He's one of our Lion Pride on Patreon, but just look at the caliber of the people I bring forward, and I tell you they're from the Patreon. So if you want to be a part of these like minds, you know what I mean, now is the time. We're building, and you can see the standard, you know what I mean, PhD article, same way, you know what I mean, Rastafari. We went into the history of Ghana on his first appearance, Ghana 101, the independent struggle. Tonight, we're going to ask about Mahama. We want to know how him feel, you know what I mean, about the country of his birth, what's going on with the gold nationalization. We have Galamsey, illegal gold mining going on. All kind of things are going right now. So, of course, we're going to ask him about these things. And Be prepared to be educated. I told him that don't feel no way to get professorial tonight, you know what I mean? Because he's a professor, you know. So I want him comfortable that he can educate us. So make sure you have your ITAL snacks. Make sure you get your meditation ready, because we're going there, high level, high frequency, Rastafari reasoning. And big up Queen Mother Moses. I had a nice reasoning with Queen Mother Moses today, and she said, you know, the reason that we call it reasoning, because she was on the live with Jerry Small last night, and big up, she was just commenting how she loved the comment section, is that the reason we call it reason, because you present your reason, you know what I mean? You give your reason for why you're saying what you're saying, so it's an exchange, you know what I mean? It's not a yes manism or a domination or a you know what I mean, a dictatorship. So before I bring forward the guests, let me just big up the greatest comment section on the internet, the Lion Pride. And if you subscribe, you're part of the Lion Pride. And everyone knows I'm biased, but I'm biased for a reason, because the comment section is high level. You know what I mean? We're getting history in my comment section. We're getting jokes. We're getting you know what I mean, meet and greet, you know what I mean, because now the Lion Pride start to know them one another. We're getting love, nothing but positive vibration. So that came over time and it continues to build. So let me just big up the item watching live. If you haven't watched live, it's an experience. You have to experience it. The comment section, as the young people would say, is lit. You know what I mean? We're lit over here. You understand? And big up, of course, the Lion Pride on Patreon. These are the financial backbone. We couldn't do what we're doing. We couldn't justify the time that we put into what we're doing. I was talking to one of my sisters and she said, you do so many episodes. She said, I hope it makes sense financially. And I had to say, yes, you know, I can't be full-time, but we are earning revenue and we couldn't do it without the collective, the community. The vision is to have it as a full-time operation, to hire staff, to have a high-tier Rastafari media operation that's going to take us through this repatriation, Iowa. So the item are making that vision manifest, and it's a joy. We're about to hit 70,000 subscribers in the Lion Pride. We have over 7,000 in the Chas March Kwasi ecosystem on Facebook. We have 6,500 on IG. You know what I mean? The whole ecosystem is growing, and it's because of the item support. So I am just a vessel. I am humbly here with an attitude of gratitude, just giving thanks for the item. We are going to make this thing happen. We want to see Haile Selassie's Ethiopia, the animated film. You know what I mean? And if you haven't bought the book, make sure you buy the book. We want a blockbuster film of the birth of His Majesty. We want to hear the thunder and the lightning in Dolby surround sound. You know what I mean? Why not? We want to see that. So we're going to make it happen. The Lion Pride on Patreon, the Ubuntu Lion Pride. Big up man like Ross Super, who just continue to just give strength. Some of my Ubuntu Lion Pride. I know I'm long-winded. I soon bring forward the guest. No worry yourself. Some of my Lion Pride on Patreon and my Ubuntu Lion Pride, even though they give their monthly attribution, sometimes they will just send a strength. And I have to just give thanks, you know, people like Super Citizen, you know, Ras Pamjay every day, you know, with the super chats, Ras Roots with the super chats. All of those little things help to build the channel. So I just want to, before we go into the content, you know what I mean, I believe we have an attitude of gratitude. I know that you're supposed to jump right into the content and get straight to the point to keep your audience, but we're not depend on that, because we are Rastafari. We are setting our own vibe here on the internet, because the people are going to come once we be ourselves, you know what I mean? And you're not coming to a Rastafari gathering and then just jumping at the things straight, you know what I mean? That is not I and I. We make people get second. So that being said, big up Frontline Books, big up all of our sponsors. We're about to bring in Akashic Records, a new sponsor. We're going to be highlighting some Rastafari TV. So you're going to see things changing up. A lot of work happening behind the scenes. Rastafari independent, non-aligned media is rising. Make sure you go and follow iYard Radio, who we partnered with for the Jerry Small episode yesterday. Make sure we get him over 1,000 subscribers. We want to monetize all of the Rastafari media platforms. So that's 1,000 subscribers, 4,000 watch hours. So make sure, go to iYard Radio on YouTube and hit the subscribe button. Let's get the brethren over 1,000 and get his watch hours up. And then also Raspective, Ras Isle Culture, Sister Janelle out of Ethiopia just started their YouTube channel. Go over to the Raspective, subscribe, and let's get them monetized as well. This is a global, because we don't just want one platform that's up and then we become a target over here at the Lion Pride. We're not depend on that. We want the numbers. We want hundreds of Lion Rastafari platforms, all serving different niches, doing different things. So the ones who love I&I will support I&I, but find where your lane is and support, and make sure you become monthly subscribers of these content creators, so that they can build and have budget and staff. They can start to, we need institutions in our community so we can hire our young people. That is what we need right now. You know, the joke time is over, game time, the theory time, the weekend Rasta. We're not depend on that right now. Big up the weekend Rasta though, because you come at the stage show them and you wave your flag, and we need that too. You know what I mean? But in terms of the core of the movement, we need serious ones in the movement right now. So I say all of that to say we're moving forward. Rastafari is rising in this Armageddon, where the food and the fuel and all of those things are about to go. Airline travel, Spirit Airline gone. JetBlue threatened the price of jet fuel. Only the wealthy will be able to travel. The door is closing on Babylon. What are we going to do? We are going to check out what's happening in West Africa. So without any further ado, let us introduce our guest tonight. He is a university professor. He is a father, a husband. He's a family man. Give a warm Lion Pride welcome to our guest for the evening, Dr. Kwadwo Oppong-Wadie. Royal greetings, family.
Royal greetings, the jazz match. Give thanks, you know.
Yes, I.
Give thanks for the vibes. Yes, I. Give thanks for the warm welcome.
Yes, and give thanks for the eye taking the time. I've been looking forward to this sip because I want to learn as well. For those who are not familiar with the eye, please just introduce the eye self and your background.
True. So before I do that, I want to say greetings to the audience. I want to say, happy African Liberation Month. And I also want to say, belated happy Victory Day, which occurred yesterday. My name is Kwadwo Oppong-Wadie, and I think the Jazz Match has given a very detailed introduction, but by way of what I can add to that, I was born and raised in Ghana, and I've been in the United States for quite a while now. I teach in the university in education, but I'm also very avid, enthusiast about the history of Africa. So it is a duty as I see it, and so I do spend time digging into I&I history as well. So I give thanks to be here. That is the little that I can add. Give thanks.
Give thanks, family. So let's start in your home country. Right now, for those who are not familiar with Ghana, just give us a little brief history of what makes Ghana unique as a place in West Africa. As you're a professor, please start with the ancient history of the region and take us up to the modern era, because we want to set the context. This is not a speed reasoning, family. So if you came for a speed reasoning, we're not doing that tonight. Tonight we're going deep, PhD, born and raised. We're going deep. Take out the pen and paper. Go, give us the history of that region.
True. So, Ghana is a country in West Africa that became a formal conglomeration of different peoples in 1957 under the leadership of the mighty Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. But before then, Ghana was known as the Gold Coast, and the part of Ghana was also known as the Trans-Volta territory. And then we also had the Ashanti, and we also have the Northern Territories. So they existed as protectorates and also as colonies. So, for instance, we had the Gold Coast colony and then the Ashanti protectorate. And then part of it was also prior to being under, that's the Trans-Volta Togoland, prior to becoming part of Ghana, was also part of a German colony. And then we had the Northern Territories, which were also a protectorate. So all the peoples who make up Ghana, which is quite a bit, have different histories, and all these histories are linked, for the most part, to the ancient kingdom of Ghana, Songhai, and Mali. And so we have even Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, when Ghana was about to gain its independence, he chose the name Ghana because he wanted to link it to ancient Ghana, with which modern day Ghana has a connection, but it is not in the same location.
Yes.
So he selected the name Ghana for the modern state, which came into being in 1957. So Kwame Nkrumah assumed the presidency in 1957, but at that time, Ghana was still somehow, even though it had gained independence, it had some kind of strings still tied to Britain. So Kwame Nkrumah led Ghana to become a republic in 1960, which meant that, on the surface level, Ghana no longer had any strings by way of attachment to Britain. Kwame Nkrumah led Ghana for 9 years, and then he was overthrown in a CIA-backed coup. And the coup makers stayed on for a little while, transitioned government to civilian. They were also overthrown. Those coup makers were Kotoka, Ankara, etc. And then they were also, taken out of power. And after that, Ghana moved from military to a civilian government for a brief moment under Dr. Buzia, who was one of the people who opposed Kwame Nkrumah. And he lasted for a little while, and he was also overthrown by General Kutu Achampo, who initially had wanted to restore Kwame Nkrumah back to power. Kwame Nkrumah then had become the co-president of Guinea after he was overthrown from being the president of Ghana. He became the co-president of Guinea together with Ahmed Sekou Touré. So he was in Guinea, but he was not able to return. Unfortunately, he passed away. So after Achampong, there was also another palace coup which overthrew Achampong and brought in General Akufu, who lasted for a little while, and then he was also he actually no, he handed over power to Dr. Hilary Liman for a little while. And Dr. Hilary Liman only lasted 18 months and was overthrown by Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings. This was the first time in 1979. No, actually, no, I got it wrong. So Akufu was overthrown by Rawlings, and then Rawlings handed over power to Dr. Hilary Liman, and then Dr. Hilary Liman lasted for 18 months, and Rawlings came back and overthrew Dr. Hilary Liman in 1981, and ruled Ghana under different guises as military leader and also as as a civilian leader for about 20 years. And then after that, handed power over to Kufuor, J.A. Kufuor, who was president a time. And then from him came President Dr. Mills, who started his tenure but passed away in office. Mahama assumed the presidency after he had passed away. And then elections were held and Mahama won. He stayed on for 4 years and then he was, unelected. So somebody else came in, which was Akufo-Addo, and Akufo-Addo stayed on for 8 years. And then Mahama stood the elections again and won, and he's been in power for about a year and a half now. So that is just
that a nice, concise history. But I want to know, who are the people of Ghana? Who are the Ga? Who are the Ewe? Who are the Ashanti? Who are the Fanti? Who are the Akwapim? All of these different peoples. Where do they come from? How did they get to that region? Give us an origin story for the people.
So there are many ethnic groups in Ghana.
Yes.
I always make
the main ones, because there are hundreds of groups in Ghana. So just give some of the main.
So the Ga people are quite a late arrival, but their origin history traces that they entered Ghana from the east, and probably from somewhere in the Lake Chad region had been where they had inhabited for a long time, even though they trace further back to ancient Egypt, having migrated from there to the Lake Chad region, and then from the Lake Chad region through present-day Nigeria, and then coming from there to their present location on the Atlantic coast of Ghana. The Equapin people, the Ashanti people, the Fanti people, they are all subsets of one big group of people known as the Akan people.
Akan. Mm-hmm.
Right. So the Akan people are primarily about almost half the population of Ghana, and also about half the population of Ivory Coast, who migrated also from a place called Dia, which is in present-day Mali, and came down through Burkina Faso, through northern Ivory Coast, and entered a place called Bonduku, which is right now in Ivory Coast. And then from there came to where is presently known as Ghana. This was before it became Ghana. The Ewe people are part of also a wider group. So the Ewe people of Ghana are connected to the Ewe people of Togo, the Ewe people of Benin, as well as Western Nigeria. But it was colonialism that divided into different countries. So today we have Ewe people inhabiting all these countries. And then we have the Mole Dagbani, which is also a big ethnic group, which is made up of like the Dagomba, the Dagara, the Frafra, etc. Mostly inhabiting the northern part of Ghana, who are also connected to Mali, and also migrated from that part of West Africa into the present location where we have Ghana today. So that is just looking at the major groups. But I always make a joke that new languages are always being found in Ghana. One time it was 58, now it's like 63. So
Africa is so complex. It's so massive and so complex, because every country have a similar story.
True.
We have some historians in the comment section, some intellects. Duncan Dunk is one of our new Lion Pride, who has really coming strong in the last few episodes. He's saying that many West African tribes trace their lineage via Chadic route back to Nubia prior to the Aksumite invasion of Kush, Monroe, which forced mass migrations. Are you familiar with that history?
Yeah, and even prior to that. So,
Okay.
ancient.
Go deep tonight, Professor. Professor, take us there. Take us there.
So when we go back to ancient Kemet
Yes.
was a civilization which was the result of many different African people coming together
Yes.
and
A confederation
confederation.
of different peoples,
Absolutely.
attracted
So
by the regular flooding of the Nile, bringing that
true,
rich
true, true,
food
true,
spilled down from the highland into a floodplain that gave some of the most reliable and stable agriculture in the history of the
true,
world.
indeed. So of course this people from South Africa, West Africa, East Africa, all over Africa, as you pointed out, there had been some climatic shifts. Where the Sahara Desert is right now was once a very forested region with all kinds of forest animals, everything living
Yes,
over there.
yes,
But there was a climatic shift that saw that region beginning to um, become more drier. But at
yes.
the same time,
I think it was spurred by a asteroid impact.
but also it's also the tilt of the earth
The
itself. So
tilt of the earth
it's
of
not
the
the
earth.
first time it has happened,
Yes,
right,
yes,
in history.
yes,
So you know it's very probable that when the earth shifts in that direction again, the Sahara Desert will see forest and vegetation
yes,
much more
yes,
again. But so the Nile River, as you pointed out, became the highway because the annual flooding brought about the deposit of silt, and
yes,
this silt provided the basis for a great agricultural based revolution, which attracted people from all over Africa, from South Africa, West Africa, East Africa, to move towards um, the Nile Valley under the tutelage of the people that we now known as the Twa people, who have sometimes been derogatorily referred to as pygmies,
yes,
who were teaching a lot about everything, providing a
yes.
lot of knowledge, and that provided the basis for the establishment of ancient Egypt. Now, to answer the brethren's question or to shed some light on that, so after the demise of ancient Egypt, what happened was the people who had come to this Nile Valley to
Yeah.
establish the
Hold on, stick a pin. Why, in your opinion, did Kemet fall? We see the pyramids, wonders that even till today cannot be explained by modern science and architecture. We see that the hieroglyphs are people, our ancestors on the wall. Why did such a mighty civilization fall? I have my thoughts, but I want to hear from the eye.
sure. So I think that is the very same reason why even Africa fell into slavery and
Yes,
colonialism,
yes. Oh,
because of our very nature. We often assume that more often than not, other people are along the same lines as we are. So in ancient Kemet, they started allowing, after a long while, allowing people like the Greeks to come in to study, right? There were also invasions from the Hyksos, who were a Caucasian people who had attempted initial invasions and failed, but eventually they started to have some wins. And then eventually, ancient Kemet was taken over by the Romans. Now, what happened was when the Romans took over, of course, they weren't doing things in the same way that the Africans were doing things. And secondly, they made ancient Egypt the breadbasket of Rome and other parts of Europe. So, as opposed to the initial establishment, which sought to um, provide and create a civilization based on Africa and for African people, with the Romans assuming power, um, the direction shifted. And now it became just a place where they were growing and exporting a lot of wheat to supply to the Europeans. And that began the demise of ancient Egypt. Now, when we go back to even pre-dynastic Egypt and look at also dynastic Egypt, there were also times when we left our way, right?
Yeah.
We deviated as a people and we came back, and then we deviated and came back. But there were also times when, especially under the Roman occupation, when the deviation um, couldn't come back again. And so that saw the demise of ancient Egypt. Now,
Yeah.
when that occurred, the people who had mostly come there to establish the civilization all left and went back to the places from which they had come. So some went back to the southern African region. We know that for instance, in the ancient Egyptian records, they themselves say that all their metal workers, came from the western part of Africa, West Africa, and there is a whole lot of metal working as tradition in West Africa. We're talking about Mali, talking about
Yes.
ancient Ghana. So even prior to the establishment of ancient Ghana, Songhai, Mali, metalwork, blacksmithing was a very known science, and therefore they brought that knowledge to the Nile Valley to also make their contribution. So they also migrated back west. So the people such as Ghana and stuff, and who trace their origins to ancient Egypt, are part of these who who returned after the demise. And so that's just in a nutshell.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I love it. I love it. We're going deep tonight, family. If you're watching live, let us know where you're watching from in the comments. We have Professor Kwame Oppong-Wadie, and if you haven't figured it out yet, or if you're new here, you also know that this brethren Queen is one of our favorite guests here on the Lion Voice Network as well. You know her as Asante Oppong-Wadie, and great orators and storytellers, and a feature here on the platform. She's been on multiple times. So now you see the balance, you know what I mean? The brethren is taking us, because a lot of times we talk about Kemet, but we don't really talk about the foundations, you know what I mean? That it really was a magnet for all of these peoples from all over Africa that came and settled there. And also that when it fell, of course, the reverse happened, a mass exodus. Because even when I went to see the Ashanti, they said they came through Kemet, but they also
True.
said they have links to Ethiopia.
True.
Do we know from your study during the time of Kemet what was happening in the highlands of Ethiopia?
Well, Kemet itself says that Ethiopia is their mother country, right?
Yes, yes,
And by Ethiopia, we're not looking at just the present day Ethiopia,
yes,
but we're
yes,
also
yes,
looking at parts of Sudan, because we're talking
yes,
about the Kush, the Meroe,
yes,
Napata, region. That is where we have the original civilization, which the prototype was established there first before ancient Kemet. So that's why we have the creation, for instance, of the Meroitic script, which has still not been deciphered, which then gave birth to what we know today as the hieroglyphs, right?
hieroglyph.
So, yeah, so Ethiopia was also, doing its thing as the mother country. And if you look at the 25th dynasty, for instance, um, you know, coming from what we now know today as Sudan, Nubia, they
Yes,
always came back to ancient Kemet whenever they felt that ancient Kemet was deviating from the original way, to come and put corrections in place and have them come back to the original way, which is the way of Amun. Amun, the original um, deity, creator deity out of Nubia, was the hidden one. So
okay,
they always came back to correct whenever they felt that there was some deviation from the original way. So sometimes people try to make it seem as if Ethiopia and Kemet were two different things. No, it was nothing like that. There was absolutely no border between
yes,
Ethiopia and Kemet. It was one people, but it's like a mother and child relationship.
And that makes sense when you think about the Queen of Sheba making an overland journey, with that massive army, and encountering no major issues,
True.
that this was one contiguous kind of civilization. Now, in terms of the migration, a lot of the history takes us into Chad, the river Niger. What was happening in that era? Because we don't really get too much. And don't worry, people, we're coming up to West Africa, but we like to. This is how Rastafari reason, we go deep. So by the time we get to what's happening today, you're going to look at it with a different lens, because we're not just looking at it like cardboard Africans causing trouble. We're saying, why did these majestic people fall into the state that we are in today and are being manipulated? A lot of that is because we don't remember the story. We were stripped of the story during colonialization and the imposition of a foreign religion. But in that Chad region, what was happening in that interim period before the Songhai dynasty, before the great Mali, before Ghana, ancient Ghana, before they migrated, what was and how long did that period last?
We'll give thanks. So it is said that one of the main attractions was Lake Chad, but Lake Chad itself was like 10 times larger than
Okay.
it is today, or became by the time that the climatic shift had occurred, and the desert, had taken over a large part. But the rivers that were feeding into Lake Chad are still there. They are just now underground. And so, even like a few years ago, maybe I would say 15, 20 years ago, the Libyan under Colonel Gaddafi,
Yes.
they did try, they actually not try, they did tap into some of these underground rivers to
Yes.
provide water for the people.
Aquifer. Yes. One of the longest aquifer
Right.
we built. Yes.
True.
Pristine water.
Indeed. So, in this day of modern technology, there are many satellites that show a whole lot of these rivers. But with the climatic shift happening, Lake Chad, began to shrink and become smaller than what it originally was. So that also spurred on further migration,
Okay.
from the Chad region moving south into the forest regions of the places that we now call Nigeria, Ghana, West Africa in general.
Okay. Okay. And talk about the first kingdom to rise in West Africa. What was the first major player after this period?
Well, so we have Ghana, Mali, and then Songhai.
Yes.
So Ghana emerged, but where it emerged is, as I pointed out earlier on, is not where Ghana is today. It was more within the region of what Mali is today, and also parts of other adjacent areas. So the King of Ghana arose. It was initially an African civilization, but then the Islamites started invading and trying to convert people to Islam. Um, in fact, the King of Ghana, Tunka refused to be converted to Islam. And one of the things that they used to do in those days is that if you do not convert, then they attack. So they began attacking, the Kingdom of Ghana, which also spread migrations of people further south into the forest region. After the Kingdom of Ghana, had fallen into demise, another kingdom came up, which is the Kingdom of Mali, which also saw its heyday. It added a lot to civilization
Yes.
under even kings like Abubakar, who were known to have started expeditions from the western coast of Africa all the way to the Americas, for instance. And then, Mali, one of the things that they also did was establish what is known today as or at least one of the oldest universities in the world in Timbuktu. And under this university, we had great scholars who were studying mathematics, astronomy, anatomy, etc. And one of them was Ahmed Baba, who had been exiled by the Islamites into Morocco, and who had written over 600 books, which are still, many of which are still in existence today. So, Mali made those contributions, and then, also through the constant invasions, also fell into demise. And then the third that arose after that was the Songhai, which came, also made its contributions, and also through the onslaught of Islam, also, fell into demise. So these are the three major
Yes, West Africa.
yes, that
Um,
arose in that region.
Talk about the role that salt played in some of the wealth, salt and gold. Talk about
Absolutely
the resources, because this has always been a resource play for the bigger powers.
true. So prior to the European arrival in West Africa, um, salt was, mined primarily in the coastal regions and then sent to other parts of West Africa, primarily also in the drier parts like, northern Mali and Senegal and that kind of area. Salt being a very necessary ingredient in the human diet for several reasons. So, because of the location of some of these cities, towns, and whatever, they had to bring the salt from the south. So, in those days, the orientation, the trade routes in West Africa were oriented facing north because gold was mined in the south, but also in places such as Mali, and it was brought across the Sahara Desert, sometimes into places in North Africa and even beyond the Mediterranean into Europe. And it was this kind of trade that saw Mansa Musa in 1324 leaving the shores of West Africa to take a pilgrimage to Mecca, which initiated a whole different dispensation in the history of West Africa as we know it today.
Yes, yes. Another thing that I marvel about West Africa is when you read about the trade in ivory, and I'm wondering how many elephants did Africa used to have in ancient time, when because you're talking about hundreds of years of trade in ivory as well as other goods. And then we have a lot of oral history, the place that we have Kazi, Habesha, we have our place in the Volta region.
Right.
One of the oral history of the Mount Afajato
Right.
is that, it was a hunter and he climbed the mountain to get away from all of the wild animals, that there were so many wild animals there, leopard and lion and all kind of things. So he climbed the mountain and he got stuck by this plant, and that's how the mountain got its name. But talk about the wildlife of the ancient Africa and the impact that these empires were having on the flora and the fauna, of West Africa.
True. So we'll start with elephants. So elephants were there was a lot of elephants in West Africa, and it is this trade in ivory that actually gave the name to the country that we know as Cote d'Ivoire or Ivory Coast today.
Yes.
That's how many elephants were in that part. But it was not only elephants; there were other animals who have moved further south as a result of the shifting sands of the Sahara, and these include zebras. At one time, there were a lot of zebras across West Africa, and moved further south into the southern parts of Africa, Zimbabwe, South Africa.
Okay,
So,
okay.
but Africa is a place of wildlife. I
Yes,
mean,
yes.
there's a lot of animals. I mean, just the other day, I just saw they said they just found a new species of some animal. You know, yeah. So, like, yeah, there are a lot of animals, and even though like in the last say 50, 60 or so years, there have been a lot of human activity in terms of the
Yes, yes,
development of cities and towns, etc. There are still forested regions with a whole lot of animals, a whole lot of just animals, all kinds,
yes, yes.
birds, just wildlife galore. So
And nature is resilient. So once the war stop and things, the wildlife will bounce back very quickly.
it bounces back all the time. Yeah,
Um, you know what I mean? So we have to give thanks. I remember the first time I went to Ghana in 2005, and I saw some vultures sitting on a power line.
right, right,
And I
right,
was
right.
just remarking how big these animals look.
Indeed,
Because in
indeed.
Jamaica we have a vulture called a crow. You
I
know,
know, I know. I've seen
yeah,
it.
yeah, the crow, which is a turkey
Yeah,
vulture. And
right.
yes, they're big, but when you see an African vulture, we watch these things on animal shows. And when you see
True.
big thing, I was like, wow, what I mean? This is
This.
Mama Africa.
Yeah,
And,
there's a place in Ghana called a city called Takoradi, which is in the
yes,
western part of Ghana, and the vultures they've been there for like centuries, and
yes,
sometimes they just fly together in the air and just you think it's like a cloud or something.
okay.
It's just huge vultures, and
I can imagine. And
vultures are also one of the sacred animals of Africa.
yeah, the last few times I've been gone, I didn't see them. You know, so that even in the short time since I've been going to Ghana, I've seen the change in terms of
True.
wildlife and the development. A lot of things you don't see that I saw the first time I went, and I mean, I don't encounter those things. So, um, all right, so we've gone through the ancient history. So I want to bring it up to the modern Ghana now. What is happening? We know famously that Ghana had the year of return. Ghana was positioning itself. There was something called um, the Joseph Project. I remember
True. True.
uh, back even before the year of return about coming forward and a lot of efforts. Of course, W.E.D. Du Bois famously went to Ghana and was buried in Ghana. His memorial is there. What is or why did Ghana position itself as this Pan African gateway? And what is happening in Ghana right now in terms of the gateway? Is Ghana still the gateway?
Well, let me answer the first question first. Um, so even in the early 1900s, we had one chief from Ghana known as Chief Sam, who came to the Americas and repatriated with him 60 families to Ghana. I'm bringing this in to say that that relationship between Ghana and the diaspora has always been there, but it was solidified under Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, who, having schooled in the United States, who, having been one of the champions of the Pan-African congresses that were held all over for the emancipation of African people worldwide. When he returned home and assumed the mantle of the presidency, made Ghana a home. In fact, he made it so every black person in the world, if you wanted to come to Ghana, you were welcome to come and live. There were no barriers or anything to that effect. So that is when this started. So there have been that interaction, occurring since that time. I believe it was in 1972 where there was a huge concert. I want to say it was called the Soul Train or something like that, which also brought a lot of people from the diaspora into Ghana. But there's always been that movement between the diaspora and Ghana. Now, fast forward to President J.A. Kufuor, who established the Joseph Project, which sought to also encourage, people, African people in the diaspora to return home. I mean, to live.
And Kufuor was from the Ashanti. That's true.
That is true. But even before him, Rawlings had also had a great relationship with the diaspora. I mean, Rawlings visited Jamaica. He visited Trinidad. He visited other places in the diaspora and received a very warm welcome there, and also encouraged that kind of interaction, between Ghana and the diaspora. So Kufuor came and continued, and then the subsequent governments have continued until when the year of return was touted and trumpeted, and saw a lot of people, visiting Ghana, and now they have something called it's a continuation of the year of return, but so that
beyond the return.
Beyond the return, right, yeah. So it's a continuous thing, and Ghana has always been a welcoming country for brothers and sisters in the diaspora who want to visit or who want to live. I mean, there have been people from the Americas, the Caribbean, places like even Brazil. Now, when we talk about Brazil, for instance, there is a section of the Ga people whose ancestors came from Brazil, and by that I mean that yes, their ancestors came from Africa, but they had been captured and sent to Brazil. And upon emancipation, upon the abolition of slavery, they returned to Ghana, and they were welcomed on the coast by the Ga people, and they were incorporated into the Ga kingdom. So even one of Ghana's famous boxers, Azuma Nelson, he is a descendant of the returnees who came from Brazil to Ghana. So that interaction has always been there, and that's why the moniker, the Gateway to Africa, was given to Ghana. So Ghana you cannot come and change that vibe of being the gateway to Africa. It's part of the culture. It's part of the identity of the country and everything like that.
I love that. We have a question. Someone's asking, didn't Rawlings have Caribbean roots?
No, he did not. His father was a European, and his mother was a Ghanaian. But he was born and raised in Ghana. He really didn't know much about his father or anything like that.
Okay.
So yeah.
And what made Jerry Rawlings so special? Because I've heard it credited to him. Ghana is one of the most peaceful countries in Africa, and I've heard that because he was so harsh, you know what I mean, and he kills, a lot of the troublemakers, quote unquote, um, that was responsible. That propaganda, Jerry Rawlings propaganda. What made Jerry Rawlings so special, and what was his contribution to Ghana?
Well, I want to say that in terms of the peaceful nature of Ghana, first, I want to attribute it to the people themselves, but also to aside for Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, because what Kwame Nkrumah did when he assumed the premiership was that he understood that the colonial system had sought to like set different people against each other and all that kind of stuff. So he was very intentional about creating a society in which familiarity became the norm of the day. So he mixed everybody, so to speak. So, you know, whether you're going into nursing, or the police force, or teaching, or even the school itself that you attended, everybody came from all over Ghana um, to become whatever school it was. It wasn't just like maybe um, if you are in Chicago, it's only the people who are from Chicago are primarily in that school. No, he created a system where everybody was mixed, and with that kind of familiarity, there is way less suspicion or anything of anybody. So that created a foundation for the peace. Now, when it comes to Rawlings, Rawlings, he sought to bring what he termed to be some level of sanity into the system, and in his initial days, he did put together some good things, I would say, for Ghana, in terms of having what we call communal labor in those days. In those days, everybody, like on the weekends, Saturday, everybody, particularly the young men and even the older men, came out, cleaned up the streets, desilted all the gutters, made sure that everywhere was clean. Cleared all the weeds and all that kind of stuff. So he brought that in, and yes, he was. I would say he put his foot down also in terms of seeking to rid the society of what he saw as corrupt practices. So the army then, was harsh as he put it in certain context, and that put fear also into the people. And there are certain things that you could not just create commotion or try to disturb the peace under Rawlings. He would just not tolerate that. It was a different time from the democratic dispensation that is there now, that requires you to go through certain processes and regard human rights and all that kind of stuff. He saw it differently. At least before he became a democratic leader, he was a military leader, and he was a military leader in the true sense of the word.
Yes. What do you think was the reason that the CIA targeted Dr. Nkrumah? Why did they have to get rid of him from his leadership?
Well, they themselves, they've written a lot about the overthrow of Nkrumah, and one of the main reasons why they claim to have overthrown him was that he was making the African too politically conscious. Um, if you look at Kwame Nkrumah, he, as you put it correctly, on the day that Ghana gained independence, he emphatically said that the independence of Ghana is meaningless unless it is linked with the total liberation of the African continent. And it was not just words that he was putting into the air. He actually took practical steps. Most of the liberation fighters who went back to their countries to go and fight for the liberation of those countries were all trained in Ghana. He established camps, and these people came in, got military training, went back to their countries and fought for independence. So he was not only acting for the country Ghana, he was acting for Africa as a whole. And apart from that, he was also championing a Pan African vision. And the
Yes.
Pan African vision meant that the resources of Africa had to be the under the ownership of Africans and had to be for the benefit of Africans. And the colonial powers, colonialism is about resource control. And when I say resource, I don't mean just um, minerals. I also mean, yes, minerals, but also human capital, right? Is what the colonists seek to control. And since Kwame Nkrumah was on the opposing side and was seeking to eliminate colonialism from the African continent, they saw him as a threat, and they worked hard to eliminate him. Before the 1966 coup, they had tried many times using bombs, all kinds of things to try to eliminate him, but he stood firm until finally he was able to be eliminated in 1966. I want to cast your mind back to the fact that under Kwame Nkrumah, Ghana had a atomic energy program, right?
Mm.
That's how quickly he had moved the country, right? Which is still there today, but is not functioning um,
Yes. Yes.
on the level that he had established it in those days. So he was moving fast towards industrialization. That was a threat to the imperial powers of Europe because they sought to just make Africa a place where they got their raw materials from. And if Africa was to industrialize, then it meant that they could no longer get those resources that they wanted for themselves. So all those factors played into them working hard to get him overthrown.
So, in terms of, and we're setting the table as to why West Africa is the way it was today, because during that time you had Kwame Nkrumah, you had Guinea, Ghana, Mali, which was like the AES of its day, Sekou Toure and Mobito Quito, and I know I probably mispronouncing that,
Modibo Keita.
Say it.
Modibo Keita.
Modibo Keita,
Yes.
of Mali. These were like the three giants, and to your point, they were funding and training a lot of the liberation movement, particularly against the same francophone countries and other colonial powers, and this is why they were targeted. When the French left Guinea, they took all of the infrastructure, leaving nothing, stripped everything down, in an attempt to sabotage, and Kwame Nkrumah had to step in
True.
and fund the whole government of Guinea for a time, which is why they welcomed him as co-president when he himself was removed because of that act of kindness. The let's get down to the resources. Let's get down, because they say anytime you want to know what's happening, you got to follow the money.
True.
Ghana was known as the Gold Coast. You know what I mean? Right now, as we're speaking, gold is over. I think is over $5,000 an ounce. It's fluctuating between 4,500 and 5,000 an ounce. Based on the geopolitics. But many financial people are saying that gold has become the de facto world reserve currency.
True.
It means all of the central banks are buying gold, storing, as a reserve of wealth. And this is an ancient practice, particularly in times of instability and war. The wealthy will invest in these precious metals. And gold is not just a symbolic metal, it has utility as well, so it always, it's one of the most malleable substances. You can have something that's covered in gold to the micro, it retains its form and conductive properties. So
True.
gold is a very ancient resource, and it just so happens that the region we know today as Ghana, particularly in the Ashanti region, is one of the most productive gold. You can imagine if it was called the Gold Coast before Ghana, and today, you still have, whole heap of gold coming out of there. You can imagine the amount of gold in that region. Talk to us. What are the main mineral resources of West Africa? Why is it such a coveted place for the colonial powers?
Um, West Africa has a lot of resources, and as you mentioned, gold, ivory, manganese, bauxite, lithium, oil, just name it. West Africa has had it, and the whole colonial enterprise was aimed at gaining domination over these resources. Um, Hitler said it himself, Adolf Hitler. He said, we are going to have these colonies because we want the resources. The French said it. King Leopold of Belgium, in relation to the Congo, said the same thing, that they want the resources of Africa. So that has really not changed. It's the same voracious appetite and the same kind of arrogance that makes the European feel that the resources of Africa somehow belong to them, is what keeps propelling um, these kinds of colonial enterprises, which has been both, particularly in the modern era, a blessing and a curse to the West African region. Um, you know, um, Ghana, as you mentioned, has been known for gold for a very long time, and even today, it's still the number one gold producer. And the thing is, more gold is being found every day, which is like surprising. Like, you know, people are finding areas that nobody ever thought had any gold there. They go and dig, and then they find the gold. So, that exploitation of gold has gone on for centuries now, and I think there is a sense of changing direction when it comes to resources. Not so long ago, Ghana found lithium. Ghana has some diamonds as well. Um, the resources are many, but the whole colonial enterprise has made it so that the resources benefit the imperialists, the European centers, more than they benefit Africa. So that's a topic for a different
Yes,
conversation.
yes. And this is an important segue, because one of the topics I wanted to touch with you that's very current and very concerning is the topic of Galamsey,
Yes.
which is the illegal gold mining primarily being done by the Chinese in Ghana. Can you just explain to the people what is Galamsey and why is it such a hotbed issue in Ghana today?
True. So, prior to, I would say, maybe 10 years ago or so, there was, what we used to call artisanal mining, which meant that mining that was not controlled by the multinationals or big corporations. It was just people who just went to an area, dug it up, and used pans and stuff to find the gold, and found some gold here and there, and sold it and made some money for themselves. That went on, right? But then something changed, and what changed was that the Chinese, with their allies in Ghana, now sought to bring in mechanization. And this mechanization meant that whereas prior to that time, what was being used was very, I would say, I don't know, for the lack of a better word, crude instruments. These were not, um, things that were digging heavily into the earth or anything like that.
Yes, yes.
Wasn't negatively impacting the environment like that. There were some impacts, but it wasn't, to the scale that it is today. So when these technologies, primarily from China, were now being used to dig the gold, then it began to have negative environmental impact. There are large tracts of land which have been dug out and collected water. When the gold is washed with these mechanized systems, they just wash all the mud into the rivers, and it's polluting the rivers. And then they use harsh chemicals also to wash the gold, which is also polluting the rivers. So Galamsey is become a very topical issue, and governments, prior to Mahama, have tried, particularly according to them, tried to fight it, but so far they have not been successful because of several factors. Because there are people who are financing it with big capital. There are people who are buying the gold that comes from the Galamsey operations and sending it to places such as Dubai, for the purposes of making jewelry, etc. So there is a whole underground system, which is providing an avenue for this illegal mining, which is hurting the country and also the environment to continue. So Galamsey is as you pointed out, an illegal mining system that has come about in the last decade or so, which has not been good for the environment. One other thing that is also fueling this operation is the lack of employment. A lot of young people who are unemployed see it as an avenue to make some money, so they go into the digging. But the people who are financing it in terms of buying the equipment and all that stuff, they are sometimes foreigners, they are sometimes locals with money, and are sparing this on. The government say they're trying to do something about it. They've set up some system of blue water guards who go around and police the waters. They have what I would call a paramilitary organization now hunting down the people who are carrying out these operations. But
Yeah.
The desired results remain to be seen.
Remain to be seen. Give thanks. If you're watching live, we are here with Dr. Kojo Oppong-Wadie, and this is an episode we are looking at West Africa. What is happening? We're getting an update on war and peace in West Africa. If you're watching live, let us know where you're watching from in the comments. I love the energy. We're gonna go to a couple of the comments. And big up again to the Lion Pride, Ras Roots, always coming through with the strength, $5 contribution. And you can give, one of the ways you can support the channel is by giving a super chat. If you look above the comment section, you'll see a button there. You can give a contribution. We have $5 coming in. And Ras Roots is one of our model Lion Pride. He always welcome our guests and give a attribution. So big up yourself, Ras Roots. Welcome, Dr. Kwadwo Oppong-Wadie, based Blessed African Liberation Month. And Ras Roots is also part of our Lion Pride on Patreon, along with Dr. Kwadwo Oppong-Wadie. So you can see the caliber of family that we are building here, the like minds coming together for Rastafari independent non-aligned media. Here is another member of our Lion Pride on Patreon, Tafari, big up yourself, King. Enough respect, Rastafari elders. I'm not an elder yet. I don't know about Kojo if he's an elder. I can't speak for the brethren, but I haven't reached. I'm a mature adult, I say.
Well,
You
when I was a young man coming up in Rastafari, I know that. So when you're 45, that's when the eldership begins. So
okay.
So if you are 45, then you can't run
I'm
away.
above 45, but that must be a Ghana. That must be a Ghana thing because I know Jamaica. You have to touch at least 60 before a man sight as an elder. But give thanks for the ice spec. And big up the greatest chat on the internet, the Lion Pride. I see the nice vibes taking place in the chat. Let me see if I can pull out a couple of questions. I see a sound stank and dank. ECOWAS is a proxy of the West and plays a major role in deciding if they will keep the AES landlocked. And stank and dank, every episode he comes and says the AES is a proxy of Russia. So I want to deal with this. And again, I think it's an oversimplification. I'll give you my sound. I think it's an oversimplification to call AES a proxy. Ibrahim Traore gave a now famous interview where he details what life was like under the French. He said that under the French, when the terrorists attack, sometimes it would take them months to respond based on the orders that they were given as a military. And that as the military of Burkina Faso, they had to borrow their weapons from neighboring countries. And this is when the French have a base there. The French are occupying. They're the colonial power that's supposed to be protecting Burkina Faso from the terrorists. And they are directing the military activity. And he said after they would go and do their military operation, they'd have to return their weapons. Remembering that the army is made up of poor people from the rural areas. These are the soldiers that are fighting. Remembering that most of the wealthy people in the colonial structure have been co-opted by the colonial system. So they serve as the puppets of the colonial system. So when you say that Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger are puppets because they align themselves with Russia to get support, weapons, satellite data, training, modern drones and things. Yes, you could say that these countries are buying influence, and it would be naive to think they're not. But you also have to understand that you cannot fight these former colonial powers without getting that assistance. The level of technology that you're up against, the implements. So they have to choose sides, you know what I mean? And this is why I say that these are fronts in the Third World War, because all these nations on the earth, you see the sides having to be chose. One of the things His Majesty did was try to balance both the East and the West in terms of, and this is where the analysis when people call His Majesty a puppet, why we always push back, because they don't understand geopolitics, they don't understand leveraging interests, and they don't understand the reality. You cannot isolate yourself and survive in these landscapes. You'll be taken out very quickly, you know what I mean? Because you trying to stay pure to your ideal and don't know that the brethren beside you is getting paid millions of dollars to take you out, aka Thomas Sankara, his best brethren took him out. So you can't be naive. And if he maybe had a closer alignment with opposition to the colonial powers who have their own intelligence, their own, maybe he would have known these people were compromised, And so it's not to say that you bow to the other power, but they have technologies and things that you would require. So that being said, before we go into that complexity, give us a history of the OAU, Ghana's role in the formation of the OAU, his relationship with His Majesty, Ghana as one of the founding fathers, founding nations of the OAU, and then take us into the creation of ECOWAS and how ECOWAS got to what it is today, which is a proxy of the G7 Western nation, former colonial nation. So give us that history.
Sure. So, even prior to Ghana gaining independence, as you're very well aware, the fact that Ethiopia, in terms of direct colonization, was not a country that experienced that. Now, Liberia is also makes a similar claim, even though Liberia was under direct tutelage of the United States. All the other African countries, were either colonized by Britain, France, Germany, Portugal, Spain, Belgium, Denmark, etc. So upon Ghana gaining independence, the first country that Osajifo Kwame Nkrumah visited was Ethiopia. He went to His Majesty, and you may also notice that most of the flags of the African countries have some combination of red, gold, green, and black. That is all paying homage to Ethiopia from the time that Ghana, being the one of the first countries south of the Sahara to gain independence, and ushering in that red, gold, green flag. So from that initial undertaking, Ghana and Ethiopia began to have a very strong and cordial relationship. In fact, Kwame Nkrumah saw His Majesty as his elder, so to speak. And so this relationship also was very instrumental in the creation of the Organization of African Unity, which had its initial meetings and inceptions in places such as Accra and also Addis Ababa, etc. So Organization of African Unity was formed in reaction to the demand for African unity, but it was also like a placeholder, so to speak, because there were some reactionaries who felt that the demand for African unity was didn't have an immediate need. They didn't see the immediacy of that need and positioned themselves in opposition to that. So that saw that the demand not materializing, and the Organization of African Unity coming in as a way to have some kind of united front, even though the unity itself had not materialized. Now, ECOWAS comes in as an economic community of West African states, which began in the 1970s, early 80s, as a kind of conglomeration of West African states who, on paper, sought to have develop economic opportunities and trade among themselves for the benefit of the people of West Africa. Now, over time, the organization has really not been performing to desired standards, but it's also because the whole Africa is what needs unity. It's not just West Africa. So in recent times, ECOWAS has been used by the Western powers. We saw that materialize when there was a coup that overthrew the president of Niger, Bazoum, and Nigeria, under the influence of the Western powers, was threatening to go and practically bomb Niger if Niger did not transfer power back to the deposed president. So ECOWAS has also been touting for years that they were going to create like a West Africa-wide currency, but because of its subservience to France, that has never been able to materialize. So in one way or the other, as rightly pointed out, ECOWAS has become a kind of puppet of the Western powers. And so the AES countries such as Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali decided to leave ECOWAS and form AES because of that whole action that Nigeria and other countries wanted to take against Niger, which was very unpopular across the whole of West Africa, which resulted in them not being able to do anything to that. But I also think that, as you pointed out earlier, during the days of Kwame Nkrumah and Sekou Toure and Modibo Keita, the template for African unity was put in place in the Ghana-Guinea-Mali Union. And today we see Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali following a similar path. And I think that is also something that we can learn from, because, as His Majesty said, unity is the desired goal, and African unity is the only thing that is going to ensure our survival and our prosperity as a people. If we survive in these small configurations, we are powerless. We only can gain some strength by putting in the work to bring about that unity. So, that little unity that exists between the AES countries is today, yielding some results for them. And I think that's something we all need to take a cue from. You're muted.
Dank and Dank says, Kwasi, did Russian African Corps defend in Mali last week? Wagner has been training their military for the last 5 years, which is correct. And we're going to get to what's happening currently, because the biggest challenge to the AES is happening as we speak. A major attack against Mali took place. And when we talk about Guinea, Ghana, Mali, and then we talk about Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali, the common denominator is Mali, So Mali is a key pressure point in this African unity. And of course, we talked about the ancient empire in Mali, a lot of knowledge in Timbuktu still is there as a repository of ancient. The reason I make a distinction between a typical proxy war is because, to me, when you use the word proxy, it almost robs the agency of the actors. You know what I mean? In terms of they're just serving the interests of this foreign power. That is, that's typically how it's used when we use it in the modern context. And when we look at Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali, and how they are empowering their people, building infrastructure, and the type of assistance that they're getting is really to defend the gains that they are making against the inevitable attacks that have been coming. I see you use the word reductive. I think it's reductive to just paint them as Russian proxies. This is an authentic African revolution, and they have allied themselves with Russia. Typically the proxy doesn't carry his sidearm into the Kremlin. You know what I mean? Like my good brethren Ibrahim Traore. And these things are symbolic to show that as African, and this is just my interpretation, of everyone is entitled to their interpretation. The symbology of Ibrahim Traore walking with his weapon, walking always in his military garb, in his flak jacket, bulletproof vest. It's to show that Africa is not going to bow this time. You know the playbook. We know, and we will take allies, but we're never going to drop our guard from the mission that has to be executed. And famously, Ibrahim Traore has been targeted. They say over 20 assassination attempts, multiple attempts to bribe people in his inner circle. But the biggest test, and there have been jihadists, let's say that as well, since the French time, and the jihadist activity when the French was there is not as pronounced because, and this was revealed by the Doge, during the Doge in America, a lot of documents were revealed in terms of USAID and the Foundation for Democracy because of the infighting in the US. And it was revealed that a lot of these jihadist groups in Africa were being funded through USAID and the Foundation, National Endowment for Democracy. It was a big thing. There was a brethren, Mike Benz, who did a whole expose, a reporter, following the money to all of these militant groups in Africa being funded by these organizations. And the reason being is that they justify these colonial armies having their military bases, AFRICOM and also the French. Why are they in Africa? We're in Africa to fight this spread of terrorism. Who's funding the terrorists? Okay, the money come right back to the same colonial people. That's why we can't ever get rid of these terrorists. So it was an ecosystem that had developed. The AES now is disrupting that now because now that they're getting weapons, they're actually going out and killing the terrorists, and wiping out the forces. So what has happened recently is that there was a major, I think over 12,000 man force, armored vehicles. These are supposed to be religious zealots that just pop up with the latest armored vehicles, drones, shoulder anti-tank cannons, motorcycles, the whole nine, full-scale invasion of Mali, And as Stank and Dan said, the Russians were there. The Wagner Group, which is a private army, would be like Blackwater in America. A private army was there training their military and providing logistic support, satellite data. The Russian army is there and stood and fought with the Mali and helped to save Mali from being overrun. And then the rest of the AES also came in with airstrikes. The AES has built a 15,000 member army. So this is really the first test, and this is ongoing because the terrorists are still, or not the terrorists, but the jihadists. But one thing that they didn't expect is that even the people of Mali, there's videos online of people in Mali dragging these brethren off of bikes, licking them with rocks, cutting out, their heads, all kind of things. The people are also not, because the AES has put this cultural pride in the youth that they are not going to let this revolution. So the terrorists are finding that they have bit off more that they can chew. And now, there's kind of an extermination going on. The front line has stabilized and they are being pushed out of the places that they captured, and slowly they're being slaughtered, hit every day with airstrikes. But how do you feel about what's happening with the AES? And if you can just describe to the people what is happening with the AES revolution currently.
Sure. So in order to do that, we have to put a little bit of historical context.
Yes, please.
And so we're looking at colonialism, and as I mentioned earlier on, colonialism was an enterprise that was geared towards the total ownership of the resources of the African people. Now, there's one thing that occurred when African countries started getting independence, is that the independence was a kind of de facto independence. It was not real independence. As Kwame Nkrumah pointed out, without economic independence, we are not talking about real independence, right? Because if you have political independence and your economies are still being, controlled from Washington, Paris, London, etc., then you do not have independence. So, upon the granting of independence by these colonial powers to the African countries, it was only a surface kind of independence because the resources were still controlled by the colonial powers. They are still controlled by the colonial powers, even to this day. So we take a country such as France, which has a system called France Afrique. And under this system, all its so-called former colonies have to deposit all their financial reserves in the French central bank. And whenever they want their own money, they have to go and borrow that money from the central bank and pay interest on that. So this kind of arrangement in tandem with the whole plunder of resources. Because when I say plunder, for instance, if Mali has gold and they need the gold to be mined, most countries get something between 6%, I would say tops, maybe like 13% of whatever is mined.
Yes.
Right. So, in other words, even though the resource is in these lands, it is those who are mining the resources who are actually the ones who are taking it and benefiting from it. So we see in Burkina Faso, for instance, we see Captain Thomas Sankara of blessed memory take the stage and decide to, use the resources for the people of Burkina Faso. And, as he pointed out earlier, he was taken out by the French powers under their stooge, Blaise Compaoré. Burkina Faso slides back, military coup, whatever, one after the other, until Ibrahim Traore comes on the scene. Ibrahim Traore comes on the scene, and then we have in Mali Assimi Goïta coming on the scene, and then we have also in Niger a military coup that, as I mentioned earlier on, took Bazoum out of power, and they are like, it is time for
Chiani in Niger.
Say it again.
Chiani, the
Chiani, thank you.
Yeah.
Right. So these countries say, we need to find a way to make the resources that are in our land benefit the people of our land. Just imagine, Niger was one of the largest producers of uranium. And this uranium was powering Paris in France. In fact, 70% or something of the uranium powering Paris was coming from Niger. And Niger barely had electricity. In fact, until the formation of the AES, Niger was always listed as one of the poorest countries in the world. And today, it is said to be one of the best performing economies in the world. And just by them taking control of the resources. Same thing with Burkina Faso, as mentioned earlier on, which has seen, a lot of industrialization taking place, taking control of its gold resources, using it for the construction of roads, etc. Until Ibrahim Traore took power, the entire Burkina Faso did not have more than 5,000 kilometers worth of tarred road.
Yes.
And that is like comparing to a kind of small city in America or something like that. You know what I'm saying? So this is deprivation at its peak. So these countries said, no, we are going to control these resources. Now, what does that mean for the colonial power? who has always felt that those resources belong to it. France has always felt, in fact, not even just a matter of feeling. Former French President Jacques Chirac once said that without Africa, France will slide into the position of a third world country. These are his
Yes,
words.
it's
And
happening. It's happening
absolutely,
now.
you know, so because of that, France is in a desperate situation, and it does not want to see um, what is going on in the AES continue. It doesn't want to see it replicated in other African countries, and has sought different ways to destroy what is going on. So in 2024, there were attacks across Mali. As you mentioned, the jihadists have been fighting also in Burkina Faso, um, the northern parts of Burkina Faso, sometimes even coming down to the south. Um, and the question has been, who is funding these? As you mentioned, 12,000 people with pickup trucks and all manner of ammunition simultaneously carrying out operations in about four different cities, 4 or 5 different cities, on April the 25th or 26th. I can't put it the date, but quite recently, and seeking to destabilize the government not only of Mali but by extension Burkina Faso and Niger as well. Now, what is significant also about what occurred was that there was the coming together of two groups who had hitherto not worked together. One group which calls itself the Azawad, which claims to be fighting for a part of Mali to be cut off and made into a country for their occupation. And then the other group, which is linked to Al Qaeda, which is known as the JNIM, they came together to fight against the government of Mali and actually destabilize the government, because the attacks that occurred saw them, as I mentioned earlier on, attacking cities simultaneously and even attacking the airport, and also attacking and eventually killing the defense minister of Mali, who was a high-ranking official, Sadio Kamara. So the question becomes, for all these things to occur, these groups were getting intelligence from other sources. There have been people in Mali who have been arrested who were part of the military, who were implicated, but fingers are pointing at the imperial power as the brain behind all this, and it is not surprising because, as the former Defense Secretary of the United States, Donald Rumsfeld, used to say that he doesn't understand why God put the resources of the United States in other countries. These people do believe that the resources of these countries somehow should be theirs. We've seen recently the same France who's been fingered in orchestrating these attacks, also seeking to overthrow the government of Madagascar, which they came out to say that they didn't have any involvement in that, but at the same time, the persons who were arrested in Madagascar were people who were trained by France and had links to France, who was seeking. The guy's name is one of the leaders called Basset. He was seeking to cut off electricity supply to Madagascar to create a blackout and then, carry out the operations to overthrow the government over there. So the colonial powers are not relenting. they still see that their countries should be funded by the resources of Africa.
Yes.
And this is what has resulted in what occurred in Mali that is going on as you speak as we speak. But as you pointed out, imagine if Mali was on its own without Niger and Burkina Faso being able to help. It would have been even more devastating for
Yes.
it than has been um, visible. And also, as you rightly pointed out, the people are also not bowing to the propaganda anymore. They see that their interest is directly tied into what their governments are doing on behalf of the people. So they also rose up in support of their governments. It's also important to point out that whereas we all wish that these small African countries that exist were powerful to withstand these imperial forces, the manner in which they exist right now does not equip them with that level of power to be able to confront these imperial forces. And that's why, somebody like Kwame Nkrumah said that Africa needs its own continental white army to be able
Yes.
to defend its people. And that comes about through having a united front politically, economically, socially, spiritually, everything, which is something that we don't have right now. And that is why um, countries which seek to confront the imperialists seek to align themselves with countries such as Russia as a way of gaining some form of support. Now, in the best scenario, that is not the best option, right? But we have to work towards our own unity, our own defense systems, and to be able to protect ourselves. So this was going on in Mali. The attacks, the city of Sevari, Kati, Gao, were all, attacked. But the government and the assistance of the AES countries, together with some of the military um, groups or companies from countries such as Russia, have also aided in the fight. But it must be pointed out that primarily it is the people of these countries who have resisted these terrorists and are continuing the fight to disband all of them. So I think it's a lesson for all of us, right? Because Africa as it exists right now in this small little countries, um, it does not provide the best situation in terms of true defense of the people. Um, yeah, so I'll just pause there for right now.
And I want to make it clear that we're not cheerleading for Russia or for China,
No,
because I've said on this platform that this third world war is really over who's going to control the new world order. BRICS or the G7, none of them have black people at the table at the highest level. When you look at BRICS, they're always talking about India, China, Russia. And when you look at G7, there are no black people at the table. Yes, BRICS has South Africa tacked on the end, but you never see the South African president when there's important decisions in terms of the new currency exchange that they're creating and all of those things. So I'm not a Russian apologist, but I am a realist, and I look at the template that was set by His Imperial Majesty, Emperor Haile Selassie I, and a lot of people accuse His Majesty of being a puppet because of the alliance with the British and then the Americans who became prominent, but then they neglect that His Majesty also had alliance with the Russians who built the port of Assab, under His Majesty reign in the height of the Cold War. Russia had several major infrastructure projects, and that Ismail was a champion of the non-aligned movement and balance because, again, as Ismail said, after the war, we just celebrate African Victory Day. A lot of people don't know after the war, Ismail had about $5 million in the treasury that he had to rebuild the nation. So he had to play smart. He had to form alliances. He had to allow capital to flow in because as a leader, you don't have the luxury to be an idealist. And this is something that we have to understand. There's no luxury to be an idealist when people have to be fed, when schools have to be built, when infrastructure has to be built. Why AES to I is different than a regular proxy war that we typically see out there is that typically we see the proxy doesn't have anything, and I see Stank and Donkey say that AES is funded by Russia, and I would disagree, primarily because a lot of the AES revolution was funded by them nationalizing their resources. Yes, Russia has come in and done major deals with the AES. We're not, both military and otherwise. We're not ignoring the Russian influence, but as I said, I think it's reductive to kind of say that these are a Russian proxy when part of the excitement of Ibrahim Traore, and I have Rastafari brethren on the ground in Burkina Faso right now that I'm in touch with, and I've heard the testimony. They're seeing, they're going around the country, they're seeing what has happened. The revolution that's happening in the AES is real, and that's what we have to understand, and it's touching the people. You know what I mean? And this is what makes it different. So the fact that Russians are fighting alongside the people of the AES and giving their lives to, you know what I mean? To I is part of something greater. No. Can that go bad? Of course. We can't be naive. Both Russia and China have their own interests. They're not there because it's just altruistic things. As I said, there's a major fight for who is going to control this new world order, total control of these societies. I wouldn't want to necessarily live in the Chinese society where they track you everything, and you smoke a spliff and you go to Siberia and die. I'm not into all of that. You know what I mean? So I'm not one of them people that, just naive to what is happening with China and Russia. However, in terms of this era of satellite drones, you have to have one of these two partners. You know what I mean? We see what Starlink does. You have to have even the war in Iran. Iran had to come off of GPS because GPS is Western control and go onto the Chinese system. They have a Chinese version of GPS. So when you're in these existential struggles for your survival, you have to think until Africa can have its own satellites, until Africa can have its own, and we're going to get there. And big up Dan Cote. I want to ask you about Dan Cote and his work in Nigeria, revolutionary work that he has been doing. And we're at 10 o'clock already, but we're going to do a little bit of overtime if you allow us. But the practical reality, one of the things that made me realize that the AES was serious is when they created a development bank. And it took me back to 1931 when Haile Selassie established the Bank of Ethiopia, purchasing the Bank of Egypt with his own funds and creating a national bank so that they could have an entity that could lend, also minting their own gold, bringing in agro-processing facilities, building in road construction facilities that they can build their own roads. These things are usually contracted out, so when you reduce AES to just being a Russian proxy, to me, you take all of the agency out of the people, and but and proxy is really standing in place of another. When you talk about the legal definition of what a proxy is, you're acting on behalf of another. and I couldn't characterize what's happening on the AES there. Now, is it part of the larger landscape of World War III, G7 against BRICS and the Global South? Yes, I would say that. And our sides being chosen? Yes, I would say that. But again, I wouldn't necessarily reduce it to that kind of proxy vibration based on what I see. And again, I can be wrong and I can be right, but we're sharing our views here on the Lion Voice Network with the greatest comment section on the planet Earth. So talk to me about this is overtime, by the way. If you love Lion Voice, put some emojis in the comment section. If you love the vibes tonight, high reasoning, high frequency reasoning, put some emojis in the comment section. We went deep. We went to ancient Africa, modern Africa. We in the moment with the conflicts. This is Lion Voice Network. Put some emojis. Make we know. Say you're out there. Some love. Let us know where you're watching if you're watching live. And also support the platform. Join the Patreon. We still need 3 people to hit 50. I've been just stuck at 47. We need Dr. Kojo need company. You know what I mean? He need company. You know what I mean? Ross Roots need some company. You know what I mean? Akashic Records need some company. Tafari need some company. You know, my Lion Pride and Patreon, we want company. So consider becoming a monthly member. And if you're afraid, start at the $5 level. $5 a month, that's $1.25 every strong. If you can't afford that as an adult today, I don't know what to tell the brethren right now. I'm going to tell you the truth. I don't know what to tell you. If you can't afford $1.25 every strong, I don't have a solution for the eye. But if you can afford that, start at $5. And a lot of our Lion Pride and Patreon started at the $5 level. And then later they become $10 level because they love the vibe. Some people come in at 25, some people come in at 50. Wherever you can afford, join our Lion Pride on Patreon and let's build the network. You see the caliber of people that we have in our Lion Pride on Patreon. I think I have maybe 50% of my Lion Pride on Patreon are PhDs. I just realizing, we have a lot of PhDs in there, but we also have grassroots people in there too. So it really is a beautiful assembly of light minds. We have monthly town hall meetings. We're going to be doing things. We're going to start a grant program where we give $100 US every month to a different worker, and we're going to vote on it in our Patreon. So that's one of the programs that we're going to be launching when we get to 50. And each time we reach a milestone, Patreon will launch different programs. But the idea, before we continue, the idea here on the Lion Pride is that we want our guests to be supported. We want to put capital in the hands of the workers. So my vision and my dream is that at the end of the show, Dr. Kojo will say, this is my book, this is my whatever, and 50,000 people in the Lion Pride would buy the book, spend the 10 whatever dollars, and he would wake up and have $500,000 in his account, and he would call I and say, give thanks, brethren. You know what I mean? Now I'm gonna leave my job at the university and start my own business and hire staff for the next 2 years because of coming on one platform. That is my vision for the Lion Voice Network. We want to build the alternative to Babylon, and we got to fund it ourselves. So we're about to hit 70,000 subscribers. I know that may not happen until we hit 1 million subscribers. It's the numbers. I know that. But that's the vision, and we're going to keep on chanting that until we realize that in real life. But until then, join as part of our Patreon. Join as an Ubuntu Lion Pride. A one-time contribution of $100 makes you a lifetime member of the platform. As an Ubuntu, you see the information on the screen below. Get in where you fit in, or just drop a super chat like Ross Roots and like Tafari. You can just drop a super chat anywhere you can fit in. It helps the channel. and we are building. We are the fastest growing Rastafari platforms on the planet. So before we seal up, I want to ask the eye about, and big up yourself, Johnny Johnson, one of our elders. It's a Lion Voices on the cutting edge, definitely. One of the things I want to say, how you feel about what Dan Cote is doing in Nigeria, and explain to the people who are not familiar with one of the richest men on the African continent, who is thoroughly Pan-African. What is he doing and why is it important?
Thank you. Yes, I. So, as you pointed out, Dangote is a businessman in Nigeria. He's been in business for a while. He recently was known for having cement factories that distributed cement throughout West Africa for construction purposes. And then he expanded from cement production to oil refinery. And he has established a huge oil refinery, is the largest in Nigeria right now. And he's also taken advantage of the geopolitical situation in the world right now. And by that I mean that the confusion going on in the Strait of Hormuz, which is limiting oil supplies to many countries in the world. He's taken advantage of that, supplying gas and oil to countries in Europe. Just a few days ago, he just announced that he is now supplying Ethiopian Airlines, which is a beautiful thing. I think to have, you know, Nigeria supplying the fuel for Ethiopian Airlines. I think Africa needs more of such intra-African interaction when it comes to business. So Dangote is at the forefront of oil production in Africa right now, and has positioned his businesses and by extension Nigeria as a hub for oil refinery and distribution throughout not only Africa but throughout the world.
Yes.
By way of introduction, yeah.
Give thanks for that. And I think, they're predicting famine and mass casualties as a result of what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz because of the restriction of fertilizer at the growing season. But I think Africa is going to surprise the world during this depression, the global depression. I think this is going to be a bountiful time for Africa because I think we underestimate the amount of suppression of Africa's development that comes from these outside forces. So now that these outside forces are losing their power, because this is going to take down Europe. Europe right now is almost through their energy. They're almost 100% dependent on America. And American LNG, natural gas, is very expensive. So it's taxing the European economies terribly. They blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, which was giving them cheap Russian energy. And then they also have lost 40% of their energy, which came out of Qatar. So they are, and the European economies were already straining because of the loss of their colonies, because of the loss of, Africa rising, and the rise of BRICS has been robbing, and particularly the China Belt and Road Initiative, has been diverting these African nations on the global south. So Europe was already, Europe was basically had set itself up as a parasitic entity that was feeding off of Africa. So this Straits of Hormuz, by this summer, we're going to watch potentially the collapse of Europe, and when I say the collapse, I mean blackouts, I mean food shortage, I mean, because remember Europe AC run in the summertime during summer in Europe. We had one time a few years back when the AC wasn't working and like tens of thousands of people died,
I remember that.
because of the heat
Right.
uh, wave across Europe. So you can imagine this coming summer with energy shortages, what's going to happen in Europe. It's going to be very rough. So for all of our Rastafari people in Europe, I hope the item are preparing. It's going to create a reverse brain drain, I believe. A lot of the Africans who went to Europe to escape are going to be returning, trying to find ways to get on boats and return back to where they came from, because Europe is going to be so dreadful. And they're going to be seeing that, just like COVID, when they expected Africa to have bodies lying in the street, and Africa was one of the best regions when it came on to how it dealt with COVID, had some of the least impact on Africa. I think this hormones crisis, because it's going to force farmers to go back to traditional farming, because also a lot of the chemical fertilizers are coming out of this region, or petrochemical fertilizers. So it's going to, they're looking at it that farmers are going to be in famine. And one of the things my brethren, I spoke to a brethren today, one of my brethren who was in Burkina Faso, and he's touring different farms and things. And I don't feel, he's sharing it on his social media, so I don't feel any way to say that. But one of the things he told I is that it's all natural. No, Ibrahim Chore has banned chemical fertilizers from Burkina. He said everything is organic, everything is, and this is a farmer telling me, this is a brethren who runs an industrial level farm. So he's not a romanticized
Right.
who's going there and saying, everything is, he's touring farms from a position of knowledge and saying, King, this thing is real. You know what I mean? This is the sound I'm getting from my brethren on the ground in Burkina Faso. This thing is real. You know what I mean? Natural. And this is the work of Ibrahim Chore. So can it go south? Can it go wrong? Of course. These human beings. But until then, I have to fight that. We can't become so jaded that we miss, something that is really special that is unfolding before us. And also the impact on the youth of Africa. This revolution in the AES has reignited the Pan-African flame, that was just an ember, before, but this has reignited the flame. So to seal up, because I know you have class tomorrow, where do we go from here? What do you see for the future of West Africa? What trends are you seeing? What is it that you see?
Well, there are some, I would say there is a vision for a level of self-determination. We see in the AES countries, but we also even see in countries such as Senegal and Ghana seeking to move in a direction where they are, getting some level of control of their resources, even though it's nowhere near where it's supposed to be. You mentioned earlier about the gold situation in Ghana. So like just about a week or two ago, Ghana announced that, the multinational corporations should, by December, cede over operations in the gold mining sector to local participants. Now, while that sounds good, I think that the real benefit would have come from nationalization of the resources. But what is happening is not nationalization. In fact, what they're saying is that what has been happening for a long time is these companies control every single step of the supply and distribution chain. So they're now saying that you cannot do that anymore. You are going to have local people handling like the transportation, food distribution, the logistics of the gold operations. You're going to have to contract local companies to do that. Whilst that is a step in the right direction, I think that is very far from um, you know gaining full ownership and of the resources, right? A few about a month or so ago, there was also a situation where Europe, United States, China, you know, were trying to influence Ghana to go their way because Ghana had said that they were moving away from just having a fixed rate percentage for gold, and they were going to move towards a sliding scale. So, which meant that if the gold prices went up, then the percentage that accrues to Ghana goes up. If the gold prices went down, then the percentage that accrued to Ghana went down. And the players, China, United States, um, European countries, England, etc., they were not happy about that at all. They sent delegations um, to Accra to try to convince the government to rescind that decision, but the government rejected their proposals and actually went ahead and passed through Parliament, which was approved for the sliding scale, which I believe is between 6 and 13%, which is still nothing. I mean, a lot of African countries you see having oil and stuff like that, they're only getting like 10%,
Mm-hmm.
12%, some even as low as 7%, which is really nothing. So we see the same colonial structure still in place and still working towards the benefit of the imperial powers. So, I think that one of the things that has also occurred is also access to information. With the rise of the internet, people are, being able to, from their little corner, get a peek into what goes on in the Western world. They are seeing that, the African people have been taken advantage of for so long, and therefore people also want to, you know, take control and determine for themselves what the future holds. So we are we are hopeful. We cannot just hope though. We Some action needs to go in alignment with that kind of hope, and that the situation in the AES is resolved, and West Africa sees peace and prosperity for its people. I need to also say that it's very interesting that the president of Nigeria um, is headed to France right after this whole thing with the AES countries. Um, I'm saying that to the effect that about a month or two ago, there was a situation in Benin where there was a coup d'état, and it is said that the president of France called the president of Nigeria, and Nigeria sent um, their air force to go into Benin to go and quell the uprising over there. So, Nigeria, the government stands right now, is very much acting on behalf of the imperialists, and
Yeah.
that does not augur well for peace in that region as well. So, these reactionary forces, hopefully are out of the picture soon, so that the true prosperity and hope and a better life for the citizens of West Africa materializes soon. But it cannot occur in a vacuum. It has to
Yes.
be a continental wide action. As I
Yes.
mentioned earlier on, it has to be an integration that is political, that is economic, that is social, that is spiritual, that will bring about the true advancement and prosperity of African people at home and abroad. Because when African people at home um, prosper, it also affects African people abroad, and vice versa. So that is what I think that we should be looking forward to the future. And it is important to point out that we should not be spectators. And I want to say this categorically in relation to the Lion Voice Network. Most of the time, when support is needed for our organizations and support is being um, asked for, we tend to think that is another person who is supposed to be doing it and not you. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to humbly request that, yes, you are the one who is being asked. Please support the Lion Voice Network. As the Jazzmaster pointed out, um, every little thing you can do is helpful. I mean, it's a great platform, and we all benefit from it. And so, whatever you can do to support it, please do so, and give thanks for these words.
Give thanks for those words of confidence, and give thanks for the I family support, and all of the families, Rastafari families that support the platform, and Pan-African families. It really means a lot to the I and the I Queen, constant support. Whenever I call on the I them always answer the call. It really, it makes it worth the time that we put in. And a lot of people don't know the time that we put in. We have to book the guests, we got to do the graphics, we got to edit video, we got, it really is a full production. And having ones like the I support, it really makes it worthwhile, and to see the community that we're building, and just knowing the importance of media, and having like the I, we got a classroom today. We got to sit in the classroom with a PhD professor on African history, and get a primer on West African history. We went to the Nile Valley and came right back. So that to I is so valuable. And the other thing that I want to say is, do you have a book? Do you have any way that people can support the I? Because it's not just about Lion Voice Network. It's also about our guests. Do you have any publications that people can support, that we can send people? We want the Lion Pride to spend money with the I.
True. So I want to highlight my Empress. She just came out with magazine, the Empress Menen Lookbook.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's a beautiful, informative magazine on Empress Menen. It's only $15. So
where do they go to get it? And send me the link in my in WhatsApp so I can put it in the description.
Sure, it's on menandchronicles.com. But I'll send you the link.
Yeah, send me the link, and I'll put it in the description. menandchronicles.com.
menandchronicles.com, yes. And then, of course, also the Empress Menen Chronicles that you're also very familiar with.
Yes.
This is also the book with a whole lot of information, whole lot of history, Rastafari, African history, etc. So both of them can be found on Empress Menen Chronicles. And then we also have the Eternal Year of African People. I'm trying to find a copy here to show you. But I'll send you the link.
Send me all of the links, and then we'll have them in the description. So, family, at least 100 people watching this need to purchase those books. I prefer 1,000. I want 50,000, but I'm also a realist. So I know hundreds of people will watch this video on the replay. Let's get at least 100 people go and purchase these books. Let's circulate the Rastafari and Pan-African dollar. And let's build real power. We have the opportunity with these platforms to build real economic power with the 1-1 cocoa full basket philosophy, the every mickle make a muckle initiative. Where we take those $5 and $10 and $15, we aggregate it with our audience, and we create millions, and we create millionaires. We can do that in the modern era with crowdfunding and with all of these things, and it doesn't break the bank of any of the individual constituent parts. So we ought to change the way we're thinking. Together we're strong. We're building a community here, so become an active part of the community. You know, if you don't want to support the Lion Voice Network because I talk too much, I'll take that, you know. I know I'm long-winded. I'm working on myself. However, support the guests, you know what I mean? Find a guest that you rate, that you love. Go into the catalog. If you go in the description and you don't see the information there, let us know. Send us a message and we'll reach out and make sure that we get the link to that guest so you can spend money with them. We want to really push that as we grow as a platform, that economic piece, because times are going to get really hard and you will not be able to survive this as an individual. So having community, being part of community, building community is so essential in this time. We're about to get into some dark days as planet Earth. The last tankers that left the Straits of Hormuz February 28th just reached California 2 days ago.
Wow.
There's nothing coming behind them. You know what I mean? So the impact, particularly for us in the United States, is about the next 2-3 weeks. And most likely America is going to go back to war. So it's not like the war is going to be over anytime soon. So we are at the cusp of something serious. And even if the war ended tomorrow, we're still going to feel the impact through the summer while they get everything back up on stream. They can't just bring everything back on stream right away. So you're going to feel it in the grocery store. You're going to feel it at the pump. I'm already paying $80 to fill up my vehicle. I have a four-wheel drive. You know what I mean? That's going to go up because right now the prices are low because the market manipulation is happening right now. So the real price of what's happening has not been priced in. So we're going into a very serious time. The only way we're going to get through it is if we put our money together and we liberate each other. You know, each one liberate the next one, and that's how we work. So we definitely give thanks for the eye. Again, we're going to put the link in the description, EmpressMenandChronicles.com. Purchase the books, buy the books. Let us know, send us a message once you purchase the book so we know that the system is working. And big up to all of the ones them. Big up Dr. Asantua as well with the powerful works. The I whole family, the I children who are all brilliant, bright angels. One of our shining Rastafari stable families, you know what I mean? So we have to lift up these examples of lion love, and we give thanks, you know, for the eye support again as a Lion Pride and Patreon member. Now, just seal us up with your final remarks to the global family.
True. I want to say, you know, Marcus Garvey didn't buy the ships just by, you know, himself. It was the support of the African people in the Western world in particular, and also on the continent, those who bought his newspapers, because the newspapers were reaching Africa in those days. That also supported him to be able to go as far as establishing the UNIA and the Black Star Line. So I call each and everyone to support the Lions Voice Network. I also want to state that you know, we should, as an African family, at home and abroad, not be distracted by any attempts to create division among us. We see it occurring all over, and these you know, white nationalists and white supremacists are seeking to divide us. They're just drawing from their old playbook of divide and rule all the time. So let's not get distracted. Let's focus on unity. Let's work with each other for the benefit of I people internationally. So I give thanks for the audience. I give thanks for the reasoning. I give thanks for the support. And Rastafari love Aitin Wali.
Give thanks. There you have it, family. Another classic episode. Big up yourself, Stank and Dank. I love the skepticism, you know what I mean? We love it. We love it over here. time will tell in terms of the AES revolution whether it it proves, but there is evidence that it is a real revolution and solid, and that it will sustain. There is evidence. We're not just fantasy and all of that as the eye is characterizing it. There's a litany of things that, and we know because we saw Tafari Makonnen do the same things in Ethiopia. And Ethiopia, regardless of the problems that it has maintained its development even into the modern era. So I do give thanks of your skepticism, as you call it, calling balls and strikes, and we love the addition to the Lion Pride, because again, we don't want over here to be a yes man factory. We want the opposition to point out, and when we're wrong, we want to be able to admit that we're wrong, because that's part of being a man and being mature, and also knowing to agree to disagree. You know what I mean? And also
agree to agree.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and let time, you know what I mean, filter out everything. So there you have it, family. Again, another classic episode of the Lion Voice Network. And we won't stop. Join us this Saturday morning, 10 a.m. We have a panel from South Africa. They are planning a big festival for African Liberation Day. We're going to hear some of them are inner city youths. When we think of South Africa, don't think about rhinoceros and giraffe. Think about Manhattan and think about Harlem. You know what I mean? Some big skyscraper in Johannesburg. We have Garrison, Rastafari people coming on the platform Saturday, as well as others. So we're gonna get a snapshot into the life of inner city Rastafari this Saturday on the Lion Voice Network, and we'll probably have another episode in the evening as well. So make sure you join us. Why? Because the time has come for the Lions to tell our own story, and this is the Lion Voice. In the eye.
Rastafari.
It's AWTITUDE representing for the Lion's Voice. Yes, massive. This is the time for I and I, the Lion them to tell I and I story, our story. Yes? And we reign and rule like this. Reign and rule, yeah. Selassie, I reign and rule. You can't take the lion vibes, people. If you no fool, cause we know Selassie reign and rule. Reign and rule. Selassie, I reign and rule. Queen Omega drop them in the fire, pull from them, no Queen Omega, she reign and rule. Royal Kushite, ancient essence, Emperor Selassie in a majestical presence, flash of all sevens, projecting through I and I events. We sing a song for the king, we bring joy and blessing and overstanding, yeah. We hear Jah every day. Reign and rule, yeah. Selassie, I reign and rule. Yes, I Lion Vibes, Selassie, I reign and rule. Attitude say that. Boondocks, Black Organization of Global Diplomats optimizing expressions to the world. Till the world, till the end.
Amina, the time has come for the lioness to tell our own story. No surrender, no retreat, we are Jaja soldier. Rougher than the streets, tougher than a boulder. Bigging up Lion's Voice. Now put it, I jolly for say that.
Greetings, this is Rashilo. The time has come for the lions to tell their own story. See? This is the lion's voice. Keep it locked, right, sir? Rashilo said that. Are you satisfied? Wipe those tears from your eyes. I'm all alone, still you thought I was telling a lie. This is the lion's voice. Keep it locked, right, sir?
What are you waiting for? Come together, calling from near and far. Know who you are. What are you waiting for? Rally up, it takes the dust. What are you waiting for? Ancestors paved the way for us. Yes, I am Ketis Oyonde, asking, what are you waiting for to come together? The time has come for the lions to tell our own story. This is the Lion's Voice.
African pride, root of all nations, boy. I tried with the lion, the Rastafari. Lion of it tried with lioness like I do. Empress on the front line, we need you. Well, this is Medicine, the steady one, and you are now tuned in to the Lion's Voice Network. What the lion fought for do? Scorch them. Roast and parch them.
I will never stop, hail the Most High, and I will never stop, call Rastafari. Blessed love, this is Kushite representing for the Lion's Voice. We are here to tell our own story, Rastafari.
The time has come for lions to tell I own story. Yes, you're listening to Lion's Voice. I is Rastabat hailing from the island of St. Croix. Yeah, man, bring it to your Rastafari vibes. Can you feel it? Rastafari. Babylon born when Rasta come together. Can you feel it? Rastafari. Because Babylon done when I and I come together. Look how we live together, look how we work together, Oh, Babylon done when Rasta come together. Hail I, Rastafari, His Majesty and Empress men and bless. Yeah man, hail him from St. Croix, Rastafari, hail you.
Aye.
Empress Manel, Alliance Science. Your role universally unfold, be told. Blessed love, this is Itege Idama, and it's time for the lioness and the lion's voices to be heard. This is the Lion's Voice, Rastafari.
Yes, this is Tippy I. The time has come for the lions to tell our own story. You're listening to the Lion's Voice blog. Respect and love from St. Croix VI to the world. Rastafari.
The fittest of the fittest shall survive. My people, open your eyes. Wake up. Blessed love, this is Queen Omega representing for all lions and lionesses. With the Lion's Voice, we come to tell our story. Rastafari, live it. Hey, the Lion's Voice, Rastafari.
Yeah, David Trent of Steel Pulse, and I'm saying hail to the Lion Voice because it's time that the lion have its voice, have its own story. Says I'm stepping out here. Hear me now. Oh, yeah, the Lion's Voice. Raw.
I'm Nana Farika. The time has come for the lioness to tell her story from her viewpoint and tell the world who Queen Omega is. This is the Lion's Voice.
Well, Lion Voice, tell them that's the people first choice. Lion Voice, make the lioness them feel nice. Lion Voice, with the lion cubs we sacrifice. Lion Voice, got to show the people them the life. Lion Voice.